started off selling, I couldn't sell anything. I lost something like 8 kilos off my waist. I lived on a little room on the floor. I worked 12, 14 hours a day, and it took me more than a year of hard working to get to the point where I could actually eat enough and gain the weight back. But once you learn that skill, then you can do it again and again. So my job is to help you and give you some direction on how to become financially successful in business. Is that a good goal for today? Yeah. All right. Now, the starting point, and I was quite amazed at this many years ago, the starting point of your becoming really successful is for you to decide. Decide that you're going to do it. Decide that you're going to be financially successful. When I was 23, a wiser man told me about the 80-20 rule, is that 20% of people earn 80% of the money in every society and in every business or industry. So I said, well then, if that's the case, I want to be in the top 20%. And I didn't realize I had just made a decision. I had stepped across a line, and my whole life was different from then on. I want you to make that same decision, is that I'm going to join the top 20%, whatever it takes. And I'm going to keep working and studying and practicing and upgrading my skill until I join the top 20%. Then I learned that people in the top 20% earn on average 16 times the average of people in the bottom 80%. 16 times. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine living in a beautiful house and driving a beautiful car and going to beautiful restaurants and having a pocket full of money? Yes, when I was in my 20s, I couldn't even imagine that. And then I found that every single person who's at the top started at the bottom. And then they started to learn the skills practiced by successful people until they climbed the ladder and got to the same place. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. I have worked now with more than 1,000 of the largest businesses in the world. I've worked with more than 10,000 small and medium-sized businesses. And what I have found is that all business skills are learnable. You can learn any business skill. If you can drive a car, if you can type with a keyboard, if you can make a dish in the kitchen, you can learn any business skill. And if you learn that business skill and practice it over and over, you'll get better and better at it. And then you'll get more and more results, faster and faster, and easier, and you'll earn more and more money. And that is the same identical formula used by successful small and medium-sized business people worldwide. So in other words, it's eminently achievable. There's only one person in the world that can stop you from becoming financially independent. And who is that one person? Yes, it's always ourselves. And I didn't realize that. And most people, for the first 25 years or 30 or sometimes their whole lives, they blame all their problems and limitations on other people. It's the boss, it's the economy, it's the election, it's the Russians interfering with the election and so on. They never realize that the reason for everything that happens to you and me is in the mirror. If we're not happy with something in our lives, go to the mirror. If you want more money, you say go to the mirror and negotiate with your boss. Because that's the person who decides how much money you're going to earn. Well, over time, I had started, built, managed, or turned around 22 businesses. I built developed a program which became the best-selling program on how to start a business in the world. It's now printed in books, it's in audio programs, it's in video, it's taught all over the world, and the people who look at it say, it's the most complete program on business success ever taught. Companies hire me, and I'm happy to say they pay me well to teach them what I'm going to teach you. And I'm going to teach you some of the basic things. And I meet people in business who don't know the basics. I remember when I was 20 years old, I decided I would learn karate. And it was Shotokan karate. And Shotokan karate is sort of called the Harvard of karate because it's so difficult and so demanding. And in Shotokan karate, they talk about becoming brilliant on the basics. Becoming brilliant on the basics. And what we find is that every business has about 5 to 7 skills. Every skill, everything has about 5 to 7 skills. If you master those basics and you do them over and over again, eventually you can be a world champion. Like in karate, you can be a world champion. So I'm going to talk to you, in the time we have, I'm going to talk to you about some of the basics. And at the beginning, you're not going to get very good results. Now, Napoleon Hill, who was the greatest success teacher of all in the first half of the last century, what he said is that most people learn these ideas and they hear them, but most people do not apply them. He asked the question, what is the average number of times that a person starts on a new goal before they give up? And the answer is less than
one.
Because most people quit before they give up, before they try the first time. They think, well, that's a good idea, and then they do nothing. They go home and watch television. So I'm going to ask you that if you hear some good ideas, please apply them. And then apply them over and over again until you master them. This turning point in my life when I was 24 is that all business skills are learnable. And you could be only one business skill away from doubling your income, and you could only be a set of business skills, not very many, from becoming wealthy. When I started studying the subject of self-made millionaires, I was 35. I had hopes and dreams and fantasies, but I never really worked at it. And I worked and worked, and I began to study self-made millionaires, and I find they all do the certain things the same way. They first of all have a very clear goal. You have to set a goal that you want to achieve a net worth of $1 million or more by a certain date. And be realistic. I have people who come up to me and say, well, I want to be rich in 1 year. Well, that's not going to happen. And then if they're not rich in 1 year, or sometimes 1 week, they give up. And then someone else says, I want to be wealthy. I want to achieve a net worth of £1 million. And they say, no. And what they do is they rain on the parades of other people. They haven't even tried it themselves. But what they do is they tell everybody else that it's not possible because they didn't think it was possible for them, so they didn't do it. But remember, everything comes down to becoming brilliant on the basics. So that's what we'll talk about. I'm going to give you some basics. Now, how does business work? Well, business works very, very simply. It works by basically finding a product or service that people want and need to improve their lives. In life, human beings buy only one thing, and it is improvement. That's all they buy. And so if you can find a way to improve people's life or work in some way, cost-effective way, they will buy it from you. And if you can produce the product or service at a price below what people will pay you for it, then you will make a profit. And if you make a profit over and over, you'll become wealthy. And human beings have unlimited needs and unlimited wants. Someone was asking me some time ago, what is it that rich people think about all the time? And the answer is they think about how to improve the lives of other people. They're always looking, like a radar screen. They're always looking for a way to improve the lives of other people. They're always looking for something that people want and need. They're always listening for complaints or problems that people have and saying, how can I satisfy or solve that problem or complaint? My daughter, my youngest daughter, now rides horses. Riding horses is a very expensive thing. Unfortunately, we could afford to, first of all, rent her a horse, and then lease her a horse, and then, oh my God, buy her a horse, and then buy her a more expensive horse. And so we began to meet people in the horse business, or in basically the horse riding business. And it's mostly daughters who ride horses, and their parents are mostly people who are successful, so they want to buy nice horses for their daughters so that the daughters can win in competition. This is sort of the way the horse business works. Well, and we met this woman who was the mother of a daughter, who was a friend of my daughter. And this woman was a very shy woman. You shake hands with her, and it felt like her arm had died from the elbow down. And she was very quiet and everything else. And it turned out that she was a nurse. And as a nurse, she lost her job. She was laid off, and she couldn't find a job. So she began to advertise and promote her services privately, like a one-woman employment agency, to find work for herself. And she put together, she's a very small thinker, she put together a little package, and she advertised, and people phoned her and hired her as a private nurse. And so she went to work. And then she had found she had friends who were also nurses who couldn't find work. And they said, could you help us get a job? We need a job and we can't find a job. So she said, all right, I'll just run more ads to look for people who need a nurse, and I will charge you a commission. I think the commission was 10 or 15%. And they said, that's wonderful, because it's better than not having any work at all. So she began to get jobs for her friends. But this story is quite amazing, because when we met her, her company was the second largest nurse placement company in the United States. Her company was generating more than $300 million a year. Her husband was the financial manager of a casino in Las Vegas, and he had to quit to run her business because it was growing so fast. And we would sit around while our daughters were riding horses around in circles. That's what they do, around in circles. And here this woman is very quiet, very nice personality. The husband was very nice. And they built this business to more than $300 million a year. First of all, out of their home, and then, of course, they got offices. But can you imagine that? You say, well, I don't have any idea how I could build a successful business. And here's this little woman with no idea as well, but all she did was run an ad in the paper. And it transformed her life and her business. In Salt Lake City, Utah, which is the capital of Utah, big city, there was a nice woman, and she grew up in a family with like 6 children, and her mother made cookies. And she made beautiful cookies. She had these recipes, and so this little girl, nice girl, she just liked the cookies, so she learned how to cook cookies from her mother. And then she got married, and she had 5 children. And she made cookies for her own children, and then she made cookies for their friends, and the parents said, these are beautiful cookies, these are amazing cookies, you should make these cookies and sell them. And she said, no, but so children grew up and went to school, and finally her youngest child was about 12 or 13, and she had lots of time, so she thought, maybe I should do that, maybe I should make cookies and sell them. So she found a little cookie store, and it was in kind of an alley or a lane, and she went and she rented this little store. It had an oven, a cookie oven in it. It had gone bankrupt because someone else had it and was not able to make it successful. So she rented this little store, and she began to cook cookies. She'd take her kids to school, she'd come back to the store, and she would make cookies with butter. And by the way, these cookies were so delicious. Jeez, they were good. She had special spices, and anyway, she made them, and then she put them out in the window, and nobody bought any cookies. And so she's sitting there in the store. It's now 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the daytime, and the cookies are not selling. So she said, well, I'm not going to be passive. So she took the cookies and she cut them up into pieces, and she went down to the main street where people were walking past, and she began to hand out cookies to people going past. And people would say, oh, thank you very much. They would go, Geez, that's a good cookie. Where can you get these? She said, well, my store is down the lane. And so people would go down and start to buy the cookies. So she learned lesson number 1 is that if you want to sell to people walking past, make sure that people are walking past. And so she gave up the rental agreement on this little place, and she rented another place that was on a busier street. And more people would come to buy cookies. But it still wasn't enough. And so she said, well, what can I do? I know what I'll do. And she had her husband help her to put a tube from the oven so it poured the fumes of cookies, fresh cookies, out into the street. So people would be walking along like this and going, jeez, and they see this cookie store. They come in and they buy the cookies. And soon she expanded the size of this little store, And then she opened another store. And just with little twists like this, little basics, is to make their cookies known to people walking past. By the time it was all over, she had built a company with 500 stores all over the country, and she sold this company for $500 million. And retired as one of the richest people in America, and still is today. So, don't ever let anybody tell you, oh, you can't do it, because I don't have any knowledge and I don't have any skills. Whether you believe in God or not, I will tell you, when you're born, God places within you one or two special skills, special gifts, that you can use to achieve anything you want in life. And one of the great duties you have is to discover your special gifts. What are your gifts? And the way that you discover your gifts is you start to ask a few questions, like, what do you really enjoy doing? What gives you a lot of pleasure? What do you like to do that helps other people? What gives you energy? What happens so that when you're doing it, you lose track of time. You even forget to eat because you're so busy. And each of these people were so involved in their work, they would forget to eat. And then you find a way to do this on a small scale. And it's really quite astonishing, because then people will recognize that you're very good at that, or that's very good, or what you produce is very good. I had a client, and this client was an accountant. He was a little accountant, and he had a little accounting office in a little office building, and he was not struggling, but he was earning a living, but he was a good accountant, and his clients were very happy with him, small businesses. And he kept working, and he just couldn't seem to expand. And then he realized that too many of his clients were actually taking too much time to do other accounting work. They would do payroll, and they do paychecks, and they do rents and agreements. All these little things that businesses have no right to do, because they don't contribute any profit to the business. So he went to a couple of his customers, his clients, and said, if I could do that for you, would you pay me? And all you have to do is pay me the same amount you would pay to hire staff. And the staff now were the ones who do all the payroll and pay all the medical and fill out all the forms for the government and everything else. So I'll just charge you the same amount that you would pay, and you wouldn't have to keep the staff, and you wouldn't have to have offices for the staff, and you wouldn't have to have responsibilities for overhead and unemployment insurance and things like that. And they said, okay, we will try, because if it doesn't work, we can just go back to doing it ourselves. And so he started a little company called Pay Checks, C-H-E-X, like a breakfast cereal, Pay Checks. And he began to take over all the little paperwork from his customers for whom he was doing accounting once a year. Now, while they were doing accounting once a year, he started to do all their little non-business accounting all year round. So instead of working just in December, November, and December, he did their accounting and their bookkeeping and everything that was not their business. And basically his idea was, if this is not what your customers want and pay you for, then don't do it. Just get someone else to do it. We use the expression, farm it out. Farm it out, and today we use outsource it. So he started to do this, and his name was Tom, nice guy, came from a farm family, and today he has a company called Pay Checks. Pay Checks is the biggest single company that does the accounting for small and medium-sized businesses in the world. Tom is a billionaire. He's worth about $8 billion. He has accounting offices all over the country that handle it. He has salespeople, that's what I know. He has something like 2,000 salespeople who go and call on companies to get them to give us your clerical work. And now many other companies have formed and they do the same thing. But he's the biggest. Tom is now worth $8 billion. One of the richest men in the history of the world. And he's a little accountant, working out of a little accounting office in a little old building. Can you imagine that? And on both sides of them, there are people saying, oh, I'm an accountant, and there's no future in accounting because you have to work all day just to make a few dollars. Wham, wham, wham. So don't ever allow anybody to tell you that where you are does not contain opportunities. Many years ago, there was a man, like in the last century, actually the 1800s, there was a man who was a minister. And this minister was very well known. He had a wonderful way of writing and giving talks. And one day he was approached by a group of businessmen who wanted to find a way to fund a university for worthy young people who did not have the money to send their children to university. And they called the university Temple University. It's now one of the top 10 universities in America. And they came to him and they said, would you help us raise money to fund this university? And he said, of course. He's a good socially minded person like yourself. And he said, of course. And he sat down and he wrote a speech. And he wanted to write a speech that would have universal applications, that everybody would enjoy it. So he wrote this speech, and the speech was called Acres of Diamonds. Acres of Diamonds. It's the most famous, one of the most famous speeches in the world. And so people came out, business people promoted it, and they came out to attend this talk. And this was probably in the 1860s or 1880s, I don't remember. And they came to his talk, and he gave this talk, and the talk was a wonderful talk. He said that once upon a time there was a farmer in Africa. And this farmer had a prosperous farm. And one day, a traveler visited the farm, and he was traveling past, and this was 1,000 years ago. And he stopped and he stayed overnight on the farm, and he told the stories of people who had gone off into Africa and discovered diamond mines and become fabulously wealthy. And this farmer started thinking about that, and this traveler, this trader, kept coming back every year, and he would tell the story of these people who had gone off into Africa and discovered diamond mines and become fabulously wealthy. So one day, he decided that he was going to do that as well. He was going to go off into Africa and find diamond mines and become wealthy as well. This is a farmer, right, in ancient the Middle East. And so he did. He sold his farm. He gave away all the money. He took the money, invested it, and then he went off with a caravan looking for diamonds in Africa. Well, he traveled and he searched and he traveled and he searched and he looked and looked. And eventually he ran out of money. He ran out of friends. Very good way to run out of friends is to run out of money. And so he was abandoned by everybody. And finally, in a fit of despair, he walked himself into the ocean. He threw himself in the ocean, in the Red Sea, and drowned. Meanwhile, the new farmer who had bought the farm from him was out working on the farm one day, and he found a rock, a kind of an ugly rock, that threw off light in a strange way. So he thought, that's interesting, and it was in a little creek that ran across his farm. So he took it inside and he put it on the mantelpiece and went back to work. Well, later on that year, the trader who started this whole thing came past and he stayed in the farmer's house. And as he was looking around, he saw this big, ugly rock of the size of a baseball, if you like, or a cricket ball. And he said, oh, he said, has the old farmer come back? And he said, no, he's never been seen again. He said, well, that's a diamond. Where did that come from? And he said, well, I don't know. I found it out on the farm. And he said, well, where did you find it? And he took it back out on the farm. And they looked through the little water courses and creeks and streams, and they found another stone like that. And he said, but that's not a diamond. He said, yes, it is. But diamonds don't look like diamonds in their rough form. This was one of the great lines in history. Diamonds do not look like diamonds. They look like rough rocks. You have to take a diamond and you have to carve it, and you have to shape it, and you have to polish it for a long time before it starts to look like a diamond. And so they walked around the farm and they found another stone. And then they found another stone and another stone, and they found that the entire farm was covered with acres of diamonds. There were more diamonds than anybody had ever seen before, and this is the legend of the discovery of King Solomon's mines, the greatest diamond mines in history. The diamond mines that provided the diamonds for all the great queens of Sheba and kings and Solomon and all of his greatness and everything, would got their diamonds from these mines. And he said the problem was that the old farmer had gone off looking for diamonds without ever realizing that diamonds don't look like diamonds in their raw form. They simply look like hard, hard work. And here's the story that he would tell. He would say, in every community, in every town or city, there are diamonds under your own feet, but they don't look like diamonds in their raw form. He said they look like hard work and difficulties and all kinds of problems. You'll find that people who do start a business, like my friend Tom, the accountant, or the cookie maker, Debbie, or the woman whose name was, I think, Susan. These people had to work very hard for a long time before they were finally able to make some money from it. The point, he said, is that each person has, under their own feet, acres of diamonds. And the diamonds are contained in your natural skills. They're contained in your natural experience, things you've done in the past. They're contained in your industry right now. There's opportunities that nobody has seen. That, for example, a perfect example is our old friend the iPhone, which people can make stories about forever. And Steve Jobs had worked and worked and worked to build Apple. And Apple, when he took it over again in 1997, was on the verge of bankruptcy. It had less than 90 days before it would be bankrupt and everything would be gone. And so he said, well, we're going to have to do something different than manufacture PCs. They had 104 products, and only 4 of them were making any money. And so they had to go back and they had to actually discontinue 100 of the 104 products to free up enough money so the company could have enough reserves so that they could do something else. And through some brilliance, they discovered the iPod, and then the iPhone, and then the iPad, and changed the world. As of today, Apple has more than $800 billion in cash reserves after tax. At this rate, they'll have probably $1 trillion in cash after tax. It's called free cash flow by the end of the year. They're already the richest company in the history of man on earth. By the time they hit $1 trillion, they'll be worth more than who came from a poor family, said that if you believe you can do a thing, or if you believe you cannot, in either case, you're probably right. So I want you to think, because this is the hardest of all hurdles to overcome, it's just your belief that it's possible for you. Now, you by starting a new business and making the business successful. And you have to believe that it's not going to look like diamonds in its rough form. It's going to look like hard, hard work for a long time. The average self-made millionaire works about 60 hours a week or more, sometimes 70 or 80, and they work for sometimes several years before they break through. And at the beginning, it doesn't seem to be any advantage. And people all tell them that they're wasting their time, that they've got to have more balance, they've got to watch more TV, and they've got to have a nicer life, and so on, and they shouldn't be so ambitious or so greedy and so on. And what they do is they put their head down and they just work. They just work. So the average self-made billionaire, and this was helpful to me, works 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. And I was listening to an interview from my friend who's now never has to work again. He was interviewing one of the most successful impresarios, music song developer and producer. And his name is David Foster. And David Foster lives in Hollywood and produces songs. He's produced virtually every big singer in the English-speaking world. And he has made fortunes for countless people. And I remember listening to this interview, and my friend's name is Darren Harvey, by the way. And Darren asked him, he said, you know, you've produced more than 100 hit songs. And he said, you must be very proud of that. He said, oh yes. He said, I am proud of it. He said, but I produced more than 1,000 songs, and only 100 of them became hits. 90% failed. But I just kept doing it. And so Darren asked him, I just loved this interview, he said, well, what do you do in your spare time? And what do you do in your weekends? And there's a pause, beautiful pause. And he said, geez, he said, I don't know any successful person who works less than 6 days a week. I don't know any successful person who works less than 6 days a week. And I was very happy to hear that, by the way, because I'm not poor anymore, happily enough. And I still work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. In fact, if I'm not working 6 days a week, 10 hours or more per day, I start to feel a little bit guilty, like I'm going to be caught and taken away. And then, so it's nice to hear that some of the most successful people in the world work the same amount of time. You see, psychologists have determined that your expectations have an enormous effect on your life. And if you expect to have to work hard for a long time, then you'll be fine. You'll be able to do it. You'll have all the energy that you need. You'll have no problems at all. But if you expect that there's a quick trick and that you can turn the corner and you can become successful with just a little bit of work in a short time, well, then that will become the way you see the world. And of course, it will be disappointing and you'll eventually fail and you'll eventually give up. And then you'll try to discourage other people. So it's possible for you to become a millionaire. And what you do is you start, and this is what's helped me, is you simply start to study entrepreneurship. Starting a business is finding a product or service that people want or need, producing or arranging for shipment of the product or service, either create your own or buy somebody else's, which is what most people do, and then do it over and over again until you become more and more efficient at it so that you can earn higher and higher profits. And as time passes, you will find that you are better and better at selling, better and better at distributing, better and better at accounting, better and better at every part of the process, and you start to earn more and more money from producing a product or service that people want and need. And then you come up with ideas to produce even better products and services that even more people want and need. Something as simple as a cookie. A cookie. And you say, well, you could never do that because you're a housewife and you've got 5 kids and you're at home, blah, blah, blah. And so here's a little housewife who makes cookies at home and makes cookies in a little shop and makes $500 million. Now, I'm not saying that you should do it, but I want you to make a decision today that you are going to become a millionaire, your own millionaire, sometime in the years ahead. Give yourself a really good, reasonable date, say 5 years or 10 years. That's fairly reasonable. And then set it as a goal, and then make a plan, and then work toward the plan every single day. And you'll have every single kind of ups and downs. But at a certain point, you'll get smarter and smarter and better, and you'll start to earn more and more. So when I do my big 2- and 3-day program on business mastery and the 2-day MBA, and I've started to do 2 or 3 of these now, and people just transform their businesses. I start off by teaching a couple of basic thinking tools, as we talked a little bit earlier about how thinking is the most important thing you do. And one of the things we do, basic thinking tool, is we have people start off with what we call zero-based thinking. And zero-based thinking is where you look at everything that you're doing in your life today. And remember this, that the biggest enemy of your success is the comfort zone. Is you get into a comfort zone and you fight to stay in that comfort zone. You fight, you struggle to not do anything completely new or different. And you fight and fight and fight. And the only way that you can succeed is by doing something different from what you've done in the past. You have to be willing to move out of your comfort zone. So I developed an exercise, which I learned over the decades from some of the best thinkers in business and life. It's a very simple exercise that I want to teach you that will really help you in the years ahead. And it's called zero-based thinking. And back in 1958, a little accountant, like Tom Monahan was his name, a little accountant came up with this idea of zero-based accounting. And he said that when you're doing your accounting for the next month or the next 3 months or 6 or 12 months, instead of saying how much do we increase our expenditures in each area and how much do we lower them, ask yourself, should we be spending money in this area at all? And if the answer is no, stop doing it. And so you ask this question in your life. So you can, in accounting, you would say, is there any amount of money that I am spending for anything that, knowing what I now know, I would not start again, based on what I now know? And if there is, the next question is, how do you get out of it and how fast? So in your life, you ask yourself the question, is there anything that I am doing in my life today that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't start up again today if I had to do it over? And if the answer is you know, then the next question is, how do I get out of this and how fast? Now, zero-based thinking requires flexibility, but it also requires courage. It requires tremendous courage because people are locked in this comfort zone. And they fight to keep doing something even if it doesn't work, even if it's frustrating to them, even if it's causing them grief and expenses. They fight to continue doing it. So go through your life, and what I do is I teach, and I've taught this to the heads of billion-dollar corporations. First thing I do when I sit down with the board of directors, I say, I'm going to take you through an exercise. First question I ask, is there any relationship in your life today that, knowing what you now know, you wouldn't get into again today if you had to do it over? And if there is, then the next question you ask is, how do I get out of this and how fast? 85% of your problems in life will come from problems in relationships with other people. 85% of your business problems, personal problems, will be relationships. So step back and ask yourself, and how do you tell if you're in a zero-based thinking situation? You ask yourself, do I have any stress in my life? And stress is the greatest indication that you're in a situation you need to get out of. So ask yourself, is there anything that I am doing today that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't get into? And if the answer is no, then how do I get out and how fast? And the second area has to do with your income. A very wise man, his name is Eli Callaway, died recently, is the president of the biggest golf company in the world. He said that every single person has a design for their life. And your life design is such that your life could not happen any other than the way it's happening right now with this design. If you want something to happen differently, especially financially, or your personal relationships, or health, if you want something to happen differently, then you have to change. You have to do something different. So ask yourself, is there anything in your business or financial life that, knowing what you now know, you would not introduce? Well, when Steve Jobs took over Apple after a decade of being away, he had all his executives sit down and he broke up all the products of the company, and he had them sit down and break them up and say, is there any product that we are offering that, knowing what we now know, we would start up again today? And each of the groups of 10 executives, and they had 10 times 10, had to go through the product line and come out with recommendations of the 3 products that they would choose and out of all the products that Apple was manufacturing. And they fought and screamed, and no, we can't do this, and so on. And finally they came up with 3, and they all came back. So you've got 10 groups of executives, and they all came back with recommendations for 3. And times 3 is what? Still 300 products. They had hundreds of products. And then he forced them to go back and come up with 10 out of the 10. So the group went back to their private meetings, and they came back with 10 out of 100. Then they came back and debated and fought and everything else. And finally they came up with 10 that everybody agreed on. And then he insisted that they find 4 out of the number of products they agreed on and discontinue all the others. They practiced zero-based thinking, and it created the richest single company in the history of the world by forcing them to really go back in and discontinue all those products. Then another thing you ask, is there anything you're doing in terms of advertising, promotion, investments of any kind that, knowing what you now know, you wouldn't get into? Because you cannot prepare for the future unless you're willing to let go of the past. You've got to let go of the past. So ask yourself, is there anything in your life that's causing stress? And if it's causing stress, ask yourself, if I was not now doing this, knowing what I now know, would I start? And if the answer is no, the question is, how do I get out and how fast? And this is what company after company after company is now doing to transform their business. This is what individuals and families do to transform their businesses and to transform their lives. And just go through every part of your business. And for the rest of your life, whenever you're experiencing stress of any kind, ask yourself, if I had not hired this person, knowing what I now know, would I hire them back again today? If I had not taken this job, knowing what I now know, would I take this job again today? If I had not made this investment, and knowing what I now know, because of the enormous stress it's causing you, then ask yourself, would I make the investment again today? If the answer is no, how do you get out and how fast? You've got to clear the decks. You've got to clear the decks of everything until your decks are clean. Then you can stop doing all those things that aren't working and start anew, doing things that are working or that can work in the future. So zero-based thinking is a wonderful exercise, and it transforms businesses almost overnight. And if everybody agrees that we need to get out of this area immediately, it's amazing how transformative it can be for a business or even a family. I remember I was single for many years, and I would ask myself if I was in a relationship with a member of the opposite sex that was stressful. I would just ask, if I was not now in this relationship, would I get into it again today, knowing what I now know about her? And if the answer was no, then the next question is, how fast do I walk? Really? I remember I was teaching nature is very generous with you, in that nature tells you what you need to do to be successful and happy and live a long life. And what nature does is it gives you two measures. And the first measure is pain, physical pain. And so if you experience pain of any kind in your body, it's nature's way of telling you that whatever you're doing is the wrong thing for you. You must stop doing it. If you're experiencing pain, you must go to a doctor and find out from the doctor what you're doing wrong, what you're eating wrong, what is wrong with your body. Because nature wants you to live as long as possible. You can live longer and live better now than it's ever been possible, and nature will tell you, it'll guide you. It'll say, stop doing this, do more of that, and so on. And if you follow nature's guides, nature will show you how to live a long, healthy, happy life, full of energy and everything else. So, the other way that nature helps you is with emotional pain. Whenever you're doing something that is not right for you, nature will give you emotional pain, which will be in frustration, anger, sleeplessness, stress, anxiety, and so on. So whenever you experience any of these things for any period of time, then what you have to do is you just have to stop and say, wait a minute, if I was not now doing this, knowing what I now know, would I start up again? So this is one of the most important ways of guiding your life, because you should always be feeling good about yourself. When I was in my 30s, I began to read philosophy, and one of the things I found in philosophy is that your primary job in life is to be happy.
Yes.
And nature gives you happiness in order to give you guidance, to make sure that you do and say the right things in your life, and as a result, you're happy. If you're not happy, then you have to say, wait a minute, time out. Something is wrong with what I'm doing. But happiness must be your major guiding force. When I first read this, and I discussed it with older people, they said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Your job is not to be happy. Your job is to serve other people. Your job is to be useful to society. Your job is to contribute and all this stuff. And I've always felt there was something wrong with that. So I decided to switch it around and do only those things that made me happy. If it didn't make me happy, I would stop doing them. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Never spend any time doing things that make you unhappy. Here's another thing I found, is that never spend any time with people that make you unhappy or people that you don't like. Never spend any time with negative people. Most of All of our unhappiness in life comes from spending time with people who are negative and make our lives miserable. So make a decision that I'm not going to spend any more time for the rest of my life with negative people. And make that decision today, and then just go through your life and just basically hang up the phone on all of them. And the most amazing thing happens. It's just this tremendous sense of release. You just feel wonderful about yourself. And for the rest of your life, and I teach my children, I teach my children that they must never do anything that makes them unhappy. Because if it makes them unhappy, it's not correct. If it makes them unhappy, it means that it's wrong for them to do it. And you must never feel guilty. You must never feel that you have to stay in a negative situation or remain in a negative situation. You just simply say, no, this doesn't make me happy, and walk away. I remember I was talking about this in a seminar in Florida, and there was a woman in the audience I know who had been married for some years to a very difficult person. And in the middle of this conversation, she stood up and walked out. And I didn't see her again for 6 months, but when I did, she had gotten divorced, walked away, started a new life, new job, and everything else. She said it was the best piece of advice that she ever heard. If ever you hire someone, or you get into a partnership with someone, and you start to say, well, if I had not gotten into this, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't get into it, and walk away. Make your happiness the organizing principle of your life. Because if you don't do that, you can earn all the money that you want, and you'll never be happy, you'll never accomplish anything, you'll always be unhappy and frustrated. Well, so the second thing that in 2001, I began to teach a program for business owners like yourself. And it was a one-year program, and the program started off asking a whole series of questions. And people would come to my classroom in my offices in San Diego for one full day every 3 months for 1 year. That's 4 days. And I would design between 8 and 12 exercises. And they would come down and I would hand out the exercises. And they would fill out the forms and discuss them and debate them and decide what they were going to do about them. And then develop an action plan. And then go back home at the end of the day and put the action plan to work for the next 90 days. And then they would come back. And I would give them a very simple guarantee. I would say that if you come to my program, you will double your income and double your time off within the next 12 months. And if you don't, there's no charge. And I was charging them a lot to come to the program, paid in full, in advance. But I said, if at the end of 1 year you have not doubled your income and doubled your time off, there's no charge. And I gave the program for 7 years to over 1,000 people. That's right. Spread all over the world. And I never got a request for a refund. Yeah. And the reason was because everybody doubled and tripled their income and doubled and tripled their time off by doing some of the things that I recommended. And in this program, I used to teach several things that would absolutely guarantee that I would be successful because I did not want to give any refunds. And I taught a series of exercises that were very simple, almost like childlike exercises. And I want to teach you 2 of them for now. There were actually something like 84 exercises over the course of the year. And one of them was what I call the law of 3. And the law of 3, we also talk goal setting and things like that. But the law of 3 said that whatever you do in your work, in your life, there's only 3 things that account for 90% of the value of everything you do. And 10% of the things you do account for, or 90% of the things you do account for 10%. So, therefore, if you want to get your life organized, what you have to do is discontinue the 90% that are giving you little or no value, but are taking up all your time. So I'd have people come and they would make a list of everything they do in the course of a week or a month. The average person would be doing 20 or 30 things, sometimes 40 or 50. And then we would go through and we would ask them 3 magic questions. And these are questions for you to ask yourself on a regular basis. Question number 1 was, if you could only do one thing all day long, what would be the one single most valuable activity that you could engage in to improve your life and work? if you could just do one thing all day long, what would be the most important thing? And you write that down. Or you put a circle around the item on your list. And then you ask the question again, if I could only do two things all day long, what would be the second most valuable thing that I could do? And put a circle around that. And then you ask the third question, and by the way, these questions get progressively harder. And the third one is, if I could only do three things all day long, what would be the third most valuable thing that I could do? And put a circle around that. Then I would have them discuss in detail with the people at their table what these were and what they were going to do about them. And people found, literally, within the first day, that they doubled their productivity, doubled their income, and soon they doubled their time off because you just stopped doing all the things that were wasting time. So I want you to ask and yourself on a regular basis, what are the three things that I do that account for 90% of the value of everything I do? And then you must discipline yourself to say no to everything else. Warren Buffett, we talked about before, one of the richest self-made billionaires in history. Warren Buffett was asked, what is your secret to success? And he said, it's very simple. He said, I just say no to everything. So whatever people want, I just say no, 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 no. If it's not two or three things that I do that account for all the value of the things I do, I just refuse to do them. And so what you do is, first of all, you must be absolutely clear. Clarity is my favorite word in success. You must be absolutely clear about the three things that you do that account for 90% of your value. And you must have discipline to do only those three things. And just say no to anything else. Now this is a real shocker. So I've spent an entire day with corporate chieftains, corporate presidents. They'll come to my office and we'll sit them down and I'll be like the coach and they'll be like the client or the mentor, mentee. And I would take them through their entire work life. And I had them all prepared before they came. Just one person, me and that person, and we would go through this all day until they were crystal clear. And it was astonishing how many people were wrong. They would say, what are your three things? And they would have already filled out and sent me their answers. And so I'd go through it with them. And they were usually astonished that they had picked things that are not amongst their big three at all. They thought these were amongst the three most important things, but they're not. So I sent them back to their office and talked to their coworkers and talked to their boss or talked to their friends and asked, what are the three things that you do that are more valuable than anything else? And once they were clear about that, they would then delegate and outsource everything else to other people and focus only on three things. Sometimes there's only one or two things that you do, but there's never more than three. Oh, well, give you an example of one of my clients. He came and he said his number one activity was search engine optimization. He had a service business and he needed to develop search engine optimization so that he could be marketing more effectively to more companies around the country. And I said, well, are you technically oriented? You're a computer person. He said, no. I said, then search engine optimization is an important job in your company, but it's not your job. It's not your job to do. I said, so let me ask you the question. What are the activities that you engage in that generate the most revenue and profit for your business? He said, well, it's working with my best clients. If I work with my best clients, they give me more and more work to do, and they recommend me to more and more clients. I said, so, and when do you work with your best clients? He said, it's mostly on the telephone. I said, so the number one activity that you engage in is talking on the telephone to your best clients. And everything else. And he ended up agreeing that this was so important, it was more important than almost anything else. So he ended up spending more and more time talking to and helping and working with his best clients, helping them increase their sales and revenue, which increased his sales and revenue. And the next year, he doubled his business from $10 million to $20 million. And then he had me come into his office and teach every single person the same principle. And then teach every single person how to help all the others discipline each other to do only those three things. And the company just exploded. He thought it was his job, it wasn't his job to do. So if I were to ask you, remember in business the whole purpose of business is to generate sales and profitability. So there's never more than 3 things that you do that generate 90% of your sales and profitability. One of my clients, I remember, her name was Cynthia. She came to my first day of the workshop of the 4 days. And we put them through this exercise, and she realized, to her shock, that none of the things that she was doing, or very few of them, were the big 3. She was working on so many things. She was overwhelmed with work. She had 2 children, and she was in her early 30s. She was spending no time with her children, no time with her husband. She was working 14 hours a day. She was exhausted all the time. She was continually trying to do more stuff. And when we went through this exercise, starting from the list, and then she discussed it with the people at her table, she realized there was 3 other things that accounted for all the value. So she put circles around those. This was on a Friday. She went back to her office and met with her boss on Monday morning. She sat down with her. She'd been working there for 14 years. And she sat down with them and she said, I've been to this workshop and I've concluded that there's only 3 things that I do that contribute 90% of my value. And here they are. And so she explained the 3 to her boss, and her boss said, you're absolutely right. Those are the 3 most important things you do in this company. And she said, so I need your help. I want you to help me get rid of all the little tasks by farming them out or delegating them to other people, so I can do just those 3 things all day long. And she said, and he said, okay, I'll help you. She said, if I do that, I can double and triple my productivity. And he said, yes, you probably can. And she said, and if I do, I'd like you to double my income. And he said, okay, if you can actually double your productivity, it's a high-tech business, so everything is easily measurable, then I'll double your pay. And she said, within 30 days, he did. He said, I did, and then he did, and then I did, and he did, and he doubled my income. I did twice as much. I was getting twice as much done, finishing by 5 o'clock, spending more time with my family and my children. I became much more valuable to the company. I was promoted and moved up more rapidly. She said it was a transformation. And here I was after 14 years. I cut my workday by about 4 hours. I doubled my pay. I increased my value to my company and changed my life. So you have to keep asking yourself, what is the one thing you do that accounts for more value than anything else that you do? And that becomes your number 1. Then number 2 and number 3, which are usually support activities to number 1. I had a friend of mine, very successful businessman, came through this program, and on Monday afternoon, we've gone through the first 90 minutes of the afternoon, and we covered this exercise of all 3, and he stood up at the break, right at the break. He stood up and he said, well, he said, I'm out of here. And so we broke and people got up. And he got up, took his briefcase, and headed out the door. So I followed him out. And I said, Tom, I said, where are you going? He said, I'm out of here. I went back. We used to use an executive facility near the airport. He said, I've got to get back to work. I said, but we just started. This is like the first day of 4 days of an entire year. He said, I don't need any more. I've already learned enough to double my income and double my time off. I said, so I don't need to stay. And I said, but there's so much more. I said, no, I've got enough. He said, I'm out of here. And he did. Freddie said, thank you very much. I said, do you want your money back? He said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's one law of 3. Is we'll double my income and double it again and double it again. He said, we no limit. And I kept in touch with him because he's a good friend. And he went back and he transformed his business. He transformed his life. He transformed his income. He became wealthy. I mean, and is today. I just communicated with him 3 or 4 weeks ago. And he's living a great life. He's never had more time to spend with himself, and his family's never made more money in his life, and so on. And so you can do the same thing, but it takes thoughtfulness, and it takes courage, and then it takes discipline. So ask yourself, let's do this as an exercise, which I always do with my clients. I say, turn to the person next to you and tell them the one thing you do that's the most valuable and important thing that you do in your work. The one activity that contributes more value to your job and your work than any other single activity. Turn to the person next to you and tell them your answer. Please begin. Go ahead.
Customers, customers, customers.
Say again, it's difficult.
That's it.
You must want to think that.
You, work, work, work.
Whether it's networking, whether it's speaking to prospects,
Back to work, Slade. How about you?
whether it's asking someone, you know, whether they how about you? One most valuable activity I'd say is basic things. So when I say positive, I'm just saying that you
like a river or like electricity in that direction. And that's the key to success, is single-minded concentration, focus on a single thing. And so that's the starting point. Because if you're spending your time doing things of low value or no value, things with no consequences, then the more that you do, the worse your life will be, and eventually you will fail. So here, how do we learn things? Well, in my coaching program, which we're talking about here, we say that, first of all, you take in new information, like from me. The second thing you do is you write it down. It's very important to take notes. Let me just do a quick sidebar. Is for the rest of your life, write things down. Write things down. There's a beautiful line, and I cannot use this in non-English speaking countries. You know, I was joking with my son, David, is that I've been speaking in foreign countries where we have translation all the time. And it's such a joy to be talking to you because I can speak English and even colloquial English, and you understand it. So here is the one-liner. It says, when you think it, ink it. When you think it, ink it. If you think of something, write it down quickly. Another one-liner is catch the thought and write it down. Catch the thought and write it down. Catch the word and write it down. Because I write everything down as fast as I think of it. Because the memorization time, the amount of time that it'll stay in your mind is less than 90 seconds, sometimes less than 9. How many times have you met a person and forgotten their name within 2 seconds? So it transfers out very quickly, so unless you catch it and write it down. And with regard to being a student in a place like this, write things down. If you don't write things down, you might as well go home and watch television. Because you will not remember a thing. But it's amazing, they've done some studies at the big universities, and they find that if you write things down, your chances of remembering those things is about 9 or 10 times as much as if you don't. And if you continue to write things down, they found that the students who take the best notes got the best grades. They got the best grades, and they got the best, whatever they call them, when they graduate, the magna cum laudes and so on. And then they get hired by the best companies. They get paid the most money. And instead of starting here, after a university degree, they start here. That's where their promotion begins. Other than that, it may take them several years or forever to ever get up to this point. But if you take notes, you start off at a high level. Anyway, so when you think it, think it, write it down. And what was I talking about?
You think it, think it.
I got off track here. Pardon? Yes, it's the study of attention. And when you write things down, and so if you're constantly trying to catch things and write them down, and catch things and write them down, you double and triple your ability to learn. Yes, that's what I say about outlook learning. Learning is take in the information. Second of all, write it down. Third of all, discuss it with the people next to you. And then what you do is you have a trifecta. You have a golden triangle of learning, and you triple or 10 times the speed at which you learn something new. Just simply by listening, writing it down, discussing it with your friend. And then, of course, the next thing is to think of taking action on that as quickly as possible. The faster you take action, the longer it will stay with you. And sometimes it will stay with you for life. So, coming back, one of the other exercises I would teach to my students, like yourselves, I would say there's only 4 ways to change your life. Only 4 ways, and you can use these for the rest of your life. Number 1 is you can do more of something. And so the question you have to ask is, if you're in a situation where you're not happy with the result, 1 hour a day. And what you do is you don't turn the television on. You don't come home as most people do and on the television. Most people come home, where's the control? Where's the control? I paid for that damn thing. Where's the control? And so what you do is you just don't turn it on. So those are the two things that you can do which can change your life totally. The third way you can change your life is you can start doing something that you've never done before. And this is the biggest way to change your life, is to start something completely new, but it's also the hardest thing of all because of that comfort zone. And you start thinking, I should do this, I should read this book, or learn this new skill, or develop this, and so on. And then you maybe take a few runs at it, and you start, and you slip back into the comfort zone, and you go back to what you were doing before, which wasn't working. So whenever you decide to start something new, you must realize it's very hard. It's very hard. And you're going to have a natural tendency to slide back, to backslide. Whether it's smoking or eating desserts or anything else. The fourth way you can change your life is you can stop doing certain things altogether. And that brings us full circle to zero-based thinking. And what should you stop doing? Stop doing those things that are of no value to your future. And discipline yourself to stop doing them until it becomes a habit not to do them, rather than a habit to do them. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you, and you can answer any one of these questions. Question number 1 is, after this session today, what are you going to do more of? Question number 2 is, after this session today, what are you going to do less of? Question number 3 is, after this session today, what are you going to start doing that you're not doing now? And question number 4 is, after this session, what are you going to stop doing completely? That can change your life. It's no longer of any value to you. And, as I said, write it down. Pick one of the 4. When I work with my clients, I have them go through, sometimes with 3 answers to every question in several different categories of life. I'm just going to ask you to pick one area that you're going to do start, stop, more or less. And I say from now on in business, no matter what's going on, you say start, stop, more or less. What do I need to start, stop, more or less? Because if you answer that question correctly, it can transform your life. Double your income, make you wealthy, make you thin, change the whole nature of your business. And look at what companies like, all the high-tech companies, but companies like Apple have done, starting something completely different, stopping things that aren't working, starting something completely new, and discontinuing things that aren't working. It transformed their lives and the lives of other people. My son Michael was 16 years old, and they brought out the iPhone. And he got an iPhone, or I got an iPhone. I paid for it. And he said, Dad, you should invest in Apple. You should invest in Apple. This company's going to be really successful. Well, I've been following Apple for years, and they had a financial, colorful history. And they've been in the money, out of the money, in the money, out of the money, and so on. And I said, nah, what does a 15-year-old kid know about it? Tell me. So I didn't. And then a couple of years later, of course, Apple took off. A couple of years later, a friend of mine took all his money and invested it all in Apple. All his savings, he was about 60 years old, took all his savings, and he's Jerry, nice guy, and put it all into Apple. And within 5 years, he never had to work again for the rest of his life. And we're not talking about, a buck here and a buck there. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And my son told me to invest in Apple. And I didn't do it. He said, Dad, here's a company you should invest in. Just shut up. I don't want to talk to you. You're doing some things. So tell the person next to you, one thing you're going to do more of, less of, start or stop. And from now on, for the rest of your life, whenever you have any difficulty, frustration of anything, say, all right, there's only 4 ways to change your life, more or less of, start or stop. Which one is it here? And ask the question. And then be open to the answer, and then take action on the answer. So tell the person next to you one thing that this has triggered that you should do more or less of, start or stop. Go ahead. Into your subconscious mind. My friend Ken Blanchard, who's sold about 20 million books, Ken and his wife Margie are a very lovely couple. And what they do is they read a book when she's reading it and he's after they have read a chapter, they stop and they discuss the chapter. And this is their entertainment. They read a nonfiction book, something with ideas that they can use to improve their life or work. And then they put the books down and they just discuss them. Back and forth, back and forth. And Ken writes book after book. He makes millions and millions of dollars. And Marjorie's a very talented woman and so on. But what they do is they use the highest learning skills taught by Socrates in 500 BC. Is they just learn and discuss it, learn and discuss it. So, the next session I want to talk to you about, actually the kickoff session for building a high-profit business is leadership. And I call it become a great leader. And by becoming a great leader, this is the key, because leadership is the critical lid. It's the critical talent that determines what you successfully accomplish in life, is you become a leader. And how do you become a leader? Well, I've studied this. I've now written 20 books on leadership, a 14-book series, which is now distributed worldwide, and a series of about 5 other leadership books on different areas of leadership, which are distributed worldwide. And people tell me that these are some of the best books they've ever written. I got an email from a friend of mine who's just written another best-selling book on leadership. He said, this book, this one that we wrote together, we co-wrote it, and it's based on this program, by the way. He said this is the best program he's ever done, because it's so practical and so helpful. So leadership is everything. But people, when I was young and coming up, I hear about leadership and you have to be a leader and so on, is I thought it was kind of overwhelming, kind of, a little like leading armies into battle and giving inspiring speeches and having people jump to their feet and attack the citadel. And what I decided upon many, many years ago is that leadership is one thing. It is the ability to accept responsibility for results. Leaders accept responsibility for results. They don't make excuses and they don't blame other people. They accept responsibility. This is the job of the leader. And interestingly enough, you can become a leader with no followers. By simply saying, I accept responsibility. There's a problem. Something has fallen down. Something needs to be done. There's an emergency and so on. You step up and take care of it. Many young people will find themselves in a crisis situation and they will step up to help solve the crisis situation. They will become leaders at the age of 15 years old or even less. So you become a leader when you accept responsibility for results. So one of the questions you always have to ask is, what results are you responsible for? And of all the results that you are responsible for, what are the most important? Because this is really the essence around which your whole life turns. And you could become a leader with no followers. If you see a situation that needs somebody to step forward and take action, you immediately become a leader at that point. So your job to become a leader is really the key that determines your success. My friend John Maxwell has what he calls the law of leadership, which is called the law of the lid. If you can imagine a pot with a lid, and he said it's the pot, it's the top of the lid that determines the height of the pot. And so the leader is the lid on the pot. It's the leader's willingness to accept responsibility without making excuses that makes them a leader and usually determines the whole situation. So that's why it's an interesting thing in military leadership, which I have studied for years and years. I've even written a book on it. It's a good book, too. But what I found was that professional soldiers, professional officers especially, hope for peace, but they pray for war. And why? It's because in warfare, you have a chance to perform. You have a chance to step into a situation and be a leader. You have a chance to step forward and accept responsibility for results. In peacetime, you could be in peacetime, and this happens for 20, 25, 30 years, and never be advanced or promoted. But when the guns begin to fly, when a leader is needed, the leader steps forward and becomes potentially a great leader. All of the great generals of World War II had just been minor officers in the 20s and 30s. But when the war began and they stepped forward and accepted responsibility for results, they became some of the great leaders of world history. And so can you. And what is the greatest weakness that human beings have? It is to blame other people for their problems. It's to avoid responsibility, to not answer the phone, to tell people that they have to decide. The mark of the leader says, I'm responsible. I may not like it, it's very stressful, but I am the leader. I make these decisions. I go forward. And one of my favorite lines of leadership is dare to go forward. Dare to go forward. You may not know what to do, you may not be sure, but this situation requires someone to be a leader. Now, there have been 3,300 studies of leadership that have been done, and I'm sure there's many more, that they identify something like 50 qualities of leadership. And of these 50 qualities, they found a few that were common to all these studies going back 600 years before Christ, at the time of Cyrus the Great of Persia. And what they found is that the three great qualities of leadership is, number one, is that leaders have vision. The leaders have a clear vision. The leaders have a clear vision of the future. And this is the common, most popular single quality in all the studies of leadership. That means that you, as a leader, have a very clear, exciting picture of where you want to be sometime in the future. And you start off with a clear picture of where you want to be in your life, where you want your family to be, your children to be. And then you have a clear picture of where you want to take your organization, the people for whom you are responsible. Whether it's a small company and you're a loading dock or an accounting department. And always the most appropriate vision is to be the best. The job is to be the best, to create really an excellent department, an excellent job, and to set very high standards and keep raising the standards and never satisfied with mediocrity or average performance. Leaders set high standards. So therefore, we say if you could take a magic wand and you could wave it over your work life and make it perfect in every way, what would it look like? And how would it be different from today? And then if you could project forward 5 years and your work life was perfect, and then you come back to the present, how would it be different from today? And then what would be the first step that you would take today to create a perfect situation for the future? This requires leadership. And the best vision of all, the best vision is in military terms, is to win. The best vision in personal terms is to be the best, to be excellent at what you do, to set high standards and keep raising the standards. There are no mediocre average leaders. It's not possible. A leader must set really high standards and then help everyone else aspire to those standards. The second quality that all the studies of leadership have in common is courage. Leaders have the courage to take action with no guarantee of success, no guarantee of results. In fact, in many cases, with a great guarantee of failure. And you can imagine, I'm just reading one of the great battle stories in history. It's the story of the Battle of Marathon. And this battle was led by a Greek general. And this Greek general led his entire army against the Persians. And thousands of people on both sides were killed. And they were killed up close and personal with spears and swords. And it was a terrible situation. And his name was Callimachus. And Callimachus, one of the highest respected, an older gentleman, mature, led his army into this battle. And in the last hour of the battle, he was killed by enemy troops. And of course, it had not been in his plan. But he was willing to lead his army forward, to have the courage to go forward, to dare to go forward, and to keep encouraging his men until the battle was won. And just at the turning point of the battle, Callimachus was killed by enemy soldiers. And when you read the stories, it's just spellbinding. Oh, whoa, this is really something. So courage, vision, a clear, exciting picture of the future that you're working toward, and courage, the courage to take action with no guarantees, the courage to commit time, money, everything else, but with no guarantees. So courage is essential. You cannot imagine a leader without vision, nor a leader without courage. The leader means they're willing to take the lead. They're willing to take chances. They're willing to take risks. I have been reading studies, which I sort of mentioned, on millionaires and billionaires. And what I found is that there are now a series of studies where they've interviewed millionaires and billionaires at great length. And I read a study earlier this year on self-made billionaires. Self-made billionaires, people who started with nothing. There's about 2,500 of them in the world today. And they're now billionaires. And so you ask the question, what qualities do they have? And they asked these people the question. And one of the qualities of about 5 was the willingness to take risks. The willingness to step forward with no guarantees. The willingness to take a chance. It's impossible to imagine a great leader or a successful person who's not willing to take chances. So see yourself as a leader. Leaders have a clear vision, like clear goals, and really big, exciting goals. And second of all, they have the courage to go forward with no guarantees. So I have studied, I've taken all these courses at university in my 30s and so on, and I've read books and written books on leadership. Many people think that my books on leadership are pretty good, but the reason is because I've read, for years and years, I've read books and articles and magazines on leaders. I've read dozens and dozens of books on military leadership to give me sort of ideas. And I wrote down, 2 years ago, I wrote down 7 key behaviors or responsibilities of leadership and put them all together in a program. I taught this program to many of the biggest companies in the world. I still do. And I found in reading countless articles since then that I've never seen anybody with a better or more expensive description than these 7 qualities. So here are the 7 critical qualities of leadership for you. Now, mostly when I teach this, it is for people who want to be successful in business, especially wealthy, but they want to build successful businesses, successful careers. They want to be promoted, they want to be paid more, they want to move on, and so on. These qualities are also helpful for other activities, but they're not really qualities for being a leadership on the playground or something like that. So we say number 1 is quality of leadership or responsibility is to set and achieve business goals. To set and achieve business goals. That's what leaders do. The number 1 reason why leaders are let down, fired, demotivated, dehired, and so on, is because they are given a position and they don't achieve the goals that are assigned to them. So they have to be removed quickly. They have to be plucked out of there and replaced by someone who will do the job. And so the question you have to ask is, what are your goals? What are the goals that you want to accomplish? What are the goals that people want you to accomplish as a leader in your position? And remember my favorite word, clarity, is that if you're given an assignment by your boss, you go to your boss and you say, exactly what do you want me to accomplish? What are the most important goals that I need to accomplish in this position to make you happy, to fulfill my responsibilities? And lack of clarity is the number 1 reason for failure. In fact, if you are working very hard to achieve something that nobody thinks is important, you're actually sabotaging yourself and holding yourself back. Because if you accomplish it, you actually hurt your own career. So always be clear with your boss, especially, what are our goals? And of all of our goals, what are our most important goals? And of those goals, which ones need to be set and need to be achieved before anything else? The second of the 7 is to market and innovate. Is continually seeking faster, better, cheaper, easier ways to create and keep customers. And so in business, everything circulates around the customer. Is getting the customer what he or she wants and needs faster, better, cheaper than your competitors, and faster than ever before. So keep asking yourself, how can we serve our customers faster and easier? And that goes back to clarity. Who are our customers? And what do they need from us to be happy? Now in business, here's an interesting point, is that everyone has customers. And wherever you are in the company, if you are at the top, then your customers are your bankers, your suppliers, your major customers. If you're in the middle, your customers are the people who buy your products and services, but also all the people who work with you and around you, whose help you need to get results. And the third area, your customers are the people outside your business who need you to service them, to take care of them. Just like a doctor in a hospital has customers. Customers are the patients, the customers are the nurses, customers are the ambulance drivers and the staff and so on. They're all the people who need the service of a leader in order to achieve their goals, many of which include staying alive. So, marketing and innovating, continually seeking faster and better ways to serve people. By the way, this is very important, is there was a movie made in World War II starring Noel Coward, and the movie was called In Which We Serve. And it was an interesting title because you'll find that your job is to serve others. Your job in life, in a free society, is to serve other people. A lot of people who are in business, or not in business for that matter, do not understand the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business is to identify customers whose lives you can improve, and then to focus on improving those lives in a cost-effective way. And you'll find that human beings are designed so that you are only really happy when you're serving other people effectively. And other people are responding and are grateful and happy for your service. So what you do is service others. Your rewards in life will always be equal to the quality of your service to other people. If you want to improve your situation in business, and you ask this magic question, is how can I improve the quality of my service to my customers today? How can I improve the quality of my service to my boss, to my staff, to my coworkers? How can I improve it? This is the true measure of whether or not you are cut out for higher leadership. And people who look at business and say, oh, they're avaricious and they're greedy and people trying to make a lot of money and rip people off and make a profit and so on, these people know absolutely nothing about business. Because if you start a business, literally the first minute you start a business, you will find that everything, all your success will be determined by whether you serve and satisfy your customers and you make them happy. Because if you don't, they will drop you like a hot potato and they will go to someone else. So your job is to serve people and to serve them better and better. In fact, if you think about children play jump frog, and you jump over the one child, and then the next child jumps over you, jump over that child. This is how children play. This is how business people play. Is we jump over the previous competitor who offers a similar product or service, and then they do everything possible to offer a product or service that's better than ours. And then we do something to offer a product or service that's better than theirs. So all of life in business is constantly trying to find ways to serve our customers better. And the more you serve customers, the happier you are. The more you serve customers, the more they like you and respect you and pay you. In fact, they did a study at Harvard. It's been going on now since 1950. And it's a great study on profitability. And what they found is that companies and individuals within companies are respected more than anything else for the quality of their product. And the quality of their product is very much like a donut. Because the center of the donut is the product you sell, and the other part of the donut is the service that you provide with your product or service. It's the way that your product is sold and delivered and serviced and taken care of. So there are endless opportunities for you. Many years ago, a nice man named Tom Monahan started a company called Domino's Pizza. I think you have Domino's Pizza all over England. Is that true? Yeah. And their idea was very simple. One little 20-year-old guy with a bankrupt pizza place came up with an idea to pre-prepare pizzas and deliver them within 30 minutes. Because whenever he, as a pizza delivery man, delivered a pizza, people would be angry and say, why does it take so darn long to get a pizza? And then he found out something that made him one of the richest men in the world. It's about $8.1 billion today. He found that when people ordered pizzas, they were already hungry. And that the speed of delivery was more important than the quality, than the 50-50 quality. So he developed a system that led to 8,000 pizza restaurants worldwide, where you could call and you would get your pizza within 30 minutes for no charge. And they opened up around universities to start with, because who are the cheapest darn pizza consumers in the world? They're students at university who don't have any money. I just read an article on Domino's, this is many years later, is they're developing portable bicycle carried ovens for pizza. So a person can order a pizza and the message is actually sent to the bicycle rider who has the pizzas in this oven on the bicycle, and you can actually order the pizza and they're en route. And the pizza is actually slid forward, and it's heated while you drive there, and they can deliver a pizza within 10 minutes. Do it well and do it fast, then you jump to the front of the line. And you'll find more and more companies are focusing more and more on speed. Speed can give you such incredible advantages by just taking care of your customers faster than anyone else. So important. Makes a difference between success and failure. Now, number 4 is to focus and concentrate where superior results are possible. There's always in your business, there's always at least one thing that you can do that's more important than anything else. And if you do it, and you do it well, and you do it fast, you win the race in the marketplace. So one of the things that more and more companies do is they sit down with focus groups of customers, and they say, we cannot do everything fast, but we can do 1 or 2 things. Which are most important to you? And the customer will tell you, well, if you would just do this fast, we would use you. We'd prefer you. But what about the extra charge? No, speed is more important than price. And so if you get a reputation for delivering your product or service faster than anyone else and maintain quality so it's constant without being ridiculous, you can actually become wealthy. You can transform your entire life and business. The 5th responsibility of leadership, in my experience, is to solve problems and make decisions. Now here's something that we've learned. I've spent days on this and I've written books on it, is that here's where you are today and here's your goals, your various goals, but your biggest goal. And between you and your goal, there's something that sets the speed at which you achieve the goal. There is a problem or obstacle that holds you back more than anything else. And so your job is to say, what is my most important goal in satisfying my customers, and which is the most important problem that I can solve for them to take care of them better and faster. And then what you do is you focus all the efforts of your company on delivering your product or service to your company, to your customers faster than anyone else. And it's a very simple thing. And all you have to do is be better in one key area. And it's enough to give you an advantage in the market, even an advantage worldwide. I remember many years ago when I was coming up, this company started to advertise that they could deliver a letter overnight. And there was a company called Federal Express. At that time, there were very strict laws about anybody delivering letters except through the post office. And so they decided that the only way they could get into business is if they delivered letters for the post office, and they approved of it. So they called their company Federal Express. And of course, Federal Express is a government company run by bureaucrats who fought them tooth and nail from the very beginning. No matter what they did, they fought them and fought them and fought them. And finally, they got permission to deliver letters. And they said, we can deliver a letter overnight. We can have a central shipping place. In this case, it's in Memphis. It's just close enough to the center of the country. And we will take letters or packages from all over the U.S., ship them in here in the night, package them out, and ship them out, and people will get them at 8:30. And they said, well, you could only do that if you charge 10 times as much as a letter. Maybe 15 times as much. Outrageous amount. That'll put you out of business, you capitalist bastards. You know? This was basically the thinking. And so they had to use every kind of skill possible to deliver a letter overnight. And they did, and now they have a $100 billion company. They've made some of their original founders some of the richest people in the world. And it's quite extraordinary. We have DHL and others, but Federal Express is like a miracle. Because you can just ship things to central Mongolia in 2 days, stuff that would have taken weeks before, or maybe never, in a day or 2 days, 24, 48 hours, you can ship stuff. That's remarkable, astonishing. And people will pay premiums, and substantial premiums, 10, 20, 50, 100 times what they would have to pay with a shipping company or something else to get it delivered fast. Tell you a quick story. We talked about taking risks. When Fed Smith, who did a paper on his idea for overnight delivery, and it was rejected by his professor. They said it's nonsense, the government will never allow it, that, it's fixed, and so on. And so he pushed and pushed and pushed, and he invested everything that he had and everything his friends had, and they finally got enough permission to get going, and then they ran out of money. And they were going to run out of money, and they didn't have enough to make payroll. And so here's this company, multi-million-dollar company, it's got planes, all leased and everything else, but they are on the verge of running out of money, and they don't have enough cash to make payroll. So what can they do? Well, Fred Smith was in the military during the World War II, I guess, or Korean War. And in the military, they play cards a lot, poker especially. So he decided that he would gamble. He was a good gambler. He got on a plane and he flew to Las Vegas. He took the last $25,000 that Federal Express had. He walked into a casino in Las Vegas. He slapped the money on the table and went for everything. And won. And got enough money. He took a taxi back to the airport, took the plane, flew it back to Memphis, and had enough money to make payroll and keep the company going until they turned the corner. And that's a true story, by the way, and it's remarkable. That shows you the kind of courage that leaders have.
And a miracle.
Take everything
Impossible
that built his
miracles.
whole life and put it on the table in one roll of the dice. Wow. Jeez. If it had come up long, we wouldn't be talking about this anymore. And then number 6, quality of, or responsibility of leadership is to lead by example. And by leading by example means that you carry yourself as though everyone is watching you, because everyone is. And one of my favorite questions is this, is that what kind of a company would my company be if everyone in it was just like me? And it's a great question because it holds you to a very high standard. And you'll find that leaders hold themselves to very high standards. What kind of a company would this company be if everybody behaved like me? And so they place high standards, they come in earlier, they work harder, they stay later, they make sacrifices, they work over the weekends. They work so that if everybody worked like them, this would be a much better company. And number 7, the last responsibility is for you to perform and get results. Perform and get results, which brings us a full loop in leadership. Leaders perform and get results. So the question you always have to ask yourself is what are the most important results that I can get to be successful in my position? What are the most important responsibilities I can fulfill to help this company to grow? And recognize that everyone is watching you. Now, just as a brief aside, they asked the question, what is the most important thing that a parent can do to raise happy, healthy, self-confident children? And what they found is that children are more influenced by your example than anything else that you do or say. Children, as you know, will ignore what you say. But they will observe your example. And so however you behave toward them, however you behave toward each other, husband and wife, his children will learn that that is the way that you're supposed to behave as an adult. They will see you as a leader because you behave as a leader. You don't tell them you should be like this or you should be like that. The word should, by the way, has no role in directing behavior. Say, well, you should do this or you shouldn't do that and so on. No, you don't use a subjunctive to direct behavior. What you do is you form an example. You do it and you demonstrate the behavior and let them see you. That's more important than anything else. So this brings us to the central principle which caused me to start this program in the first place. The whole program of the 1 and 2A MBA and the total business mastery. Very simple principle. When one of the top business impresarios in the country was being interviewed, and I was listening to this, and they asked him, what is the key to building a successful company? And so we call this Build a Great Company. And I actually wrote a book called Now Build a Great Company. And so he was being interviewed on probably a radio, but probably a CD. He's been interviewed and asked, what is the most important key to success in business? And there's a dead pause, like dead air. And he said, geez, he said, 90% of business success is the quality of the product in the first place. And I almost rolled off the road when I heard that. Because of course I knew it was true, and I'd read lots of books and articles on it and so on. 90% of business success is determined by the quality of the product in the first place. Wow, think about that. And then I suddenly realized, I looked around me and there was other fireworks going off everywhere, is that the most important thing that you can do to build a successful company is to increase the quality of your product or service, is to do it better and better. And so what we find is that 90% is quality. So when you look at the most successful companies, you'll find the companies that are rated in the top 10% for quality are also the most profitable companies in their industries. And you look at Apple and Google and all these other companies. All the quality companies sell at premium prices. They sell more rapidly. They sell much more easily. They sell with fewer returns, and they never have to discount. It's interesting. I work with companies who say, look, here our way of selling is we give massive discounts. And so I'll say, well, how is that working for you? And they look down and say, not well. Because if you do not have a reputation for excellent quality, then the only way you can sell is by giving discounts and bonuses and special offers and so on. So you have to ask yourself is, how high is your quality rank? Now, there's a magazine in the United States called Inc. magazine, which stands for Incorporated. And this magazine is aimed at small and medium-sized businesses, mostly medium-sized. And every year they have a registry of the 5,000 fastest-growing businesses. And every year they pluck out of that the 500 of the 5,000, the 10%. And they ask the founders of these businesses, if you had a whole lot of money to invest in growing your business, how would you spend it? And last year and the year before, they come up with the same answer. The same answer is, if we had a whole lot of money, we would invest it in increasing our quality, improving the quality. Because nothing will increase your sales and your profits faster, better, and more predictably than getting a reputation for better and better quality. So I thought about that and I put this program, and then I thought about something else. Your reputation as a business for quality is the critical determinant of your success, whether you grow or not. And if that's the case, then your reputation, your success as a business person, 90% is determined by the quality of your work. And so what is the very best way for you to improve the quality of your career, to get paid more, promoted faster, move up faster, and so on? The answer is to do your job better and better. And most people don't understand this. And they work hard, and sometimes they work hard for 30 or 40 years. But in reality, and we talked about this in one of the other meetings, in reality, their reputation is that of doing an average job. They just do an average job. So you can do everything you want, but if you don't have a reputation for quality, and according to Harvard, 90% of your success in business is determined by your reputation. It's determined by what people say about you when you're not there. It's determined by what people say about you after they've dealt with you. And with regard to your product, 90% of your company's success is determined by what they say about your product after they've consumed it. And so the most important words in personal and product quality is after they've consumed your product, they say, this is a great product. This is a great product. This is a great service. This is a great company. These are great people. This is really a great outfit. And you go to a restaurant, this is a great restaurant. This is great food. These are great dishes. Nothing is more important than this. It accounts for 90% of your success. If you have a reputation for great quality, then what happens is people will buy your product more and more, faster and faster, and pay more and more. If you have an average reputation for quality, you have to spend all of your time pounding your customers to buy your product at low prices. There are no high-profit companies that are not excellent at what they do. So what they found in these studies, the PIM studies of quality at Harvard that I mentioned to you, is they would ask people, customers, they would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this company? And they take, say, the top 10 companies in the industry, and let's say that you are one of the top 10 companies, and they would ask how you are rated. And let us say they rate you as a 6 or 7. Well, that's not bad. It's not 1 or 2, but it's not bad. And then they look at your profits in comparison with your competitors. And you know what they find? They find that your profits will be exactly equal to your quality rating. And so the most important thing you can do is increase your quality rating. Is constantly think over and over again, how can we improve our quality? Jeff Bezos, who started off with this idea, driving across country to start Amazon, drove all the way from New York to Seattle, and then started delivering books by mail. Great story. At every table in Amazon, there's an empty chair. And when people have a meeting, there's an empty chair. And who sits at the empty chair? It's the customer. And so they always defer to the customer. And they sort of joke and say, well, what do you think about this? We're thinking of doing this or that or something else. What do you think? And then they send out messages and they phone people and they ask customers, what do you want more of or less of? What do you want us to start doing or stop doing? And they keep focusing on the customer obsessively. And they know that customers want things done fast. So what they'll do is they'll say, if we do this, would you be happy? Would you like that? And they talk to the customer as though he or she is physically present. And as a result, everybody in that company, now hundreds of thousands of employees, massive warehouses the size of airplane terminals, is they all think and talk about the customer and making the customer happy. And for them, as far as they're concerned, quality is speed of delivery. That's their primary focus. Then, in order to even capitalize, they also offer discounts. Imagine offering the fastest delivery in the world and a 30% discount and an unconditional guarantee. That's a pretty good combination. If you're not happy with your product purchase, they will take it back. You pay 100% of the shipping both directions. They will take it back, give you all your money back, you fund your money or give you a different product. And as a result, wow. Well, there's a new strategy that's coming out today, and I've only got a couple of minutes left to tell you. And it's called the strategy of monopoly. And the strategy of the monopoly is for you to position your company as a monopoly in your market. Now, what does this mean? A monopoly is a company that offers a product that people want and need, and that as far as they're concerned, they cannot get it anywhere else. So if you have a product that has a monopoly, you can sell more, you can charge more, you can sell faster and easier, you can grow your business faster. A monopoly is something that people dream about. In reality, and of course you have your people who don't understand economics, in reality the only way you can have a monopoly in a free market like the UK is a government monopoly. It's the post office or electrical services or anything. Only the government can have a monopoly because only the government can keep out competition. Only the government can create a situation. But imagine having a monopoly in your market so that you're the only person who can offer your product or service. And people say, well, that's not possible. I said, yes, it's not monopoly physically, but it's monopoly market share. Is the customer, as far as he or she is concerned, is your product or service is the only one. And I was having this discussion with a friend of mine in Dallas, and he's just opened a $50 million new warehouse for his business. He was very successful. And I said, we were telling him about this idea about monopolies. And he said, it's not possible, you can't have monopolies. I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, do you like steak restaurants? which if you're from Texas and you live in Dallas, the answer is Texas. And I said, so I want you to think about your favorite restaurant. So I said, how do you achieve this kind of a mind share monopoly in the minds of your market? So as far as they're concerned, you are the only choice. You're the only person from which I would buy that. When you think of search, by the way, perfect example, when you think of search and you're looking up information, there's probably 1,000 companies from which you could get information. What's the one company you think of?
Google.
Instantly you think of Google. Google has a monopoly in your mind. Kleenex, for decades now, has a monopoly in the minds of most consumers. As far as they're concerned, they are the only choice. There are many others, but Kleenex is the one. Doesn't mean that the others aren't similar, but we think about Kleenex, we think about Xerox, we think about Google, and so on. And it's the same thing with you, is you have to ask yourself, what could you do with regard to your product or service so people think of you exclusively when they think of buying your product or service? And then what would you have to do with regard to yourself as a professional in your field so people think only you to buy your product or service because of the quality of the work that you do. So these are some of the thoughts that you have to think. You have to ask yourself, what is it that I offer that makes me, my company, my product or service better, superior to that of any other company that offers my product or service in this market? If a 6-year-old child holding your hand said, tell me, what is the one thing about your company that offers a product or service that's better than anybody else in the marketplace? What's the one reason why we, my family, should buy from you rather than from someone else? And establishing that means moving into the top 10%. Moving to the top 10% gives you the ultimate edge in marketing. So more people will buy from you and pay more, faster, easier, with less resistance if you have that mind share monopoly than anything else. So all day, every day, you have to keep asking, what do we have to do to offer our products or services so that people feel that they are the very best available in the market today, and that they do not compete with any other product or service? Well, we could talk about this for 2 days. As a matter of fact, I would like to talk about it for 2 days, or 3 days. Your ability to be recognized as the best person in your field, offering the best product or service in your field, is the key to earning more than anyone else, and earning it faster and earning it easier. Your success in life is going to be determined in business by offering a really good product and then marketing aggressively, selling it professionally, and servicing it really, really well, and being better than anybody else who offers it in the market. And so that's how you think. If you want to become wealthy in business, how can I offer my product or service better to my customers than anybody else? And the next time I come back, I will give you more ideas, techniques, everything that you need to be more and more successful and to eventually become a euro or a pound millionaire in your industry. And I hope you do. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please one more time for the wonderful Mr. Tracy. Let's hear you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have something very special as well. We've come to the end of our business 2017. Give us all a round of applause. You've all done so well. And we also thank all the team, all the crew, and you guys for being wonderful. But we also have some very, very special people